away with it. System was always stacked against our president. Much more to say about that. You know, after yesterday and what we've been through for the past couple of months, I couldn't sleep last night. And when you can't sleep, you can do a lot of things. You can go eat something, you can watch TV, lots of things. I took out the phone, which is the last thing you should do if you can't sleep. And it got me mad right off the bat. I looked at the New York Times, and let's put that headline up. Trump incites mob. And there it is, a great big glaring lie. So many of them. Just about everything they've said about him has been untrue. And this one, I don't think they understand, the media, that we can see what they can see. They think we rely on them to tell us stuff. No. I watched that speech myself that the president gave from the ellipse. He said the opposite of riot.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Anything wrong with that? Peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. That's what this country is all about, making your voices heard. So much. They lied about so much, but again, they never realized that we could see this stuff for ourselves. So I stayed up, I read, and then about 6 in the morning, I decided to turn on the Today Show. Very peculiar, very much skewed, of course, against President Trump and the events of yesterday. But you know what was really strange? They didn't mention the name, the anchors, the reporters, for the first half hour of their much promoted special. No mention of the young woman, the Trump supporter, unarmed, who was shot and killed on Capitol Hill yesterday. Ashley Babbitt, a veteran of the Air Force, several deployments overseas. Again, unarmed, shot and killed, and almost totally unmentioned. We all knew that something bad was going to happen on the 6th. I knew it up here. People were talking about, if you got friends and family, maybe you should have them leave town, go to the country, go somewhere isolated. I heard that here. I'm not in law enforcement. You think the Capitol Hill police got wind that maybe there might be some trouble in Washington, D.C.? Because all kinds of cats and dogs descended on the Capitol. Trump supporters were probably in the mix, but so were a lot of people who just like going to protests. And did you see this? Let's take this full. At one point, it was like, rioters, step this way. What's that all about? What was that all about? Yeah, I saw some barricades rushed, people breaking the law, breaking things, hurting police officers, and they should be arrested and prosecuted. And I understand a lot of them are already going through the system. But what are we talking about here? Why did they let their guard down? I knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. And they just seemed to let it happen at points. Totally outrageous. And by the way, the media, all morning long, before it started to go south, were saying it had already gone south. I heard it, and I saw it. I saw the headlines on television, online. Let's put this one up from Fox News. I saw a bunch of people on a sidewalk walking peacefully. And this is protests erupt. They were walking on a sidewalk. I saw what they could see, and people were just walking around. It's almost like they wanted something bad to happen, or they knew something bad was going to happen. How do they know? National Public Radio, take a look at this headline. Now, Trump supporters storm U.S. Capitol, clash with police. Story was initially posted at 9:36 a.m. in the morning. Updated throughout the day, but that's kind of weird. And how about CNN? Again in the morning, calling it a coup, a desperate coup attempt. Bunch of people listening to his speech. But in some ways, you know what? It was a coup, but not like they're describing, because the horrible, horrible scenes from yesterday scared some people who promised us that they would contest the electoral votes, like Kelly Loeffler, senator from Georgia. Remember that? Last minute, to get votes, to benefit herself politically, She said she would support the president, and she said she would call out this corrupt election. But the scenes scared her, and this happened.
Right this moment, there is a mad rush in America. Apple, Amazon, Facebook, dozens more. They're all betting on a red.
Mr. President, when I arrived in Washington this morning, I fully intended to object to the certification of the electoral votes. However, the events that have transpired today have forced me to reconsider, and I cannot now in good conscience object to the certification of these electors.
She got spooked. She got spooked. And several other senators did as well. You know, that was a real letdown. That was a real letdown. Look, I'm not in their shoes. They've got their own concerns. You know who didn't let me down, though, and let us down? And he really was magnificent yesterday. Congressman Matt Gaetz.
This morning, President Trump explicitly called for demonstrations and protests to be peaceful. We got called a bunch of seditious traitors. Now, not since 1985 has a Republican president been sworn in, absent some Democrat effort, to object to the electors. But when we do it, it is the new violation of all norms. And now I appreciate all the talk of coming together, but let us not pretend that our colleagues on the left have been free of some anti-democratic impulses just because we signed on to legal briefs and asked courts to resolve disputes. There were some on the left who said that we should not even be seated in the body. States that do not run clean elections should be stripped of their electors. This fraud was systemic. It was repeated. It was the same system, and I dare say it was effective. We should reject these electors. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired.
You know, sometimes when you go through something like this, you see what people are made of. And Matt Gaetz is the real deal. I like him a lot. All right, so that brings us to Mike Pence. Mike Pence, I had an indication that he was going to go this way the other day when he said, we'll have our day in Congress. We'll hear the objections. When he said a day, that's when I realized he probably was going to take an interpretation that would, well, a narrow interpretation. A lot of people believe that the vice president under the 12th Amendment has plenary power, absolute power almost, when it comes to electoral matters once the votes are being counted. He disagreed. And yeah, reasonable people can disagree. It happens all the time. We see 5-4 decisions from the Supreme Court. But he chose a certain way, and this is what happened.
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 232 votes.
Joe Biden corrupted the system and stole those votes. They're stolen. But we have done everything we can. To a point. Just remember, we never really did have our fair day in court. Never. All right? It was always a technical issue. It was always a procedural thing, a standing thing. No, the evidence wasn't sufficiently heard. And what happened in Congress yesterday, because of the violence, it was abbreviated. We never really did get a full airing of this matter. Maybe that will happen once Joe Biden is in office. Maybe they'll come for him. Why am I saying it so definitively? Well, we have heard from the president, and let's put those tweets up. You know, they're canceling him. They're canceling Donald Trump on social media, so he's got to go through other people. Dan Scavino, one of his loyal lieutenants, statement by Donald Trump on the electoral certification. Even though I totally disagree with the outcome of the election and the facts bear me out, nevertheless, there will be an orderly transition on January 20th. I have always said we would continue our fight to ensure that only legal votes were counted. While this represents the end of the greatest first term in presidential history, it's only the beginning of our fight to make America great again. You know, President Trump, I wasn't always a fan. I first met him in 1987, and I was a little bit skeptical. I was a college freshman. But over the years, he impressed me greatly. Do you remember his inaugural address? That was something, it was both his finest moment, and it also planted the seeds of, well, impeachment and the election fraud. When he went there and told them that he would be working for us and not them.
We are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country.
That wouldn't be over. I thought it was a fabulous speech. Millions of us did, but the people who were sitting near him did not. I want to read you something from a prominent White House correspondent for the mainstream media in his book. This is John Carl. He said, "Those words were pitch perfect to millions of Trump supporters around the country who believed both parties had failed them. But those words were also a direct affront to the human beings on that inaugural platform, the congressional leaders, former presidents, and former vice presidents seated there. They had come to celebrate the American democracy and the peaceful transfer of power, and that it ended up getting a verbal kick in the teeth from Donald Trump in his very first act as President of the United States. It was a well-deserved verbal kick in the teeth. The swamp did not want to be drained, and they did everything they could to stop him. But sometimes you should be real careful about what you wish for, because I can imagine a scenario where Donald Trump could be even more powerful in a way out of office than when he was in. Let's see what happens, folks. I am deeply, deeply disappointed in the results, as I know you are. But let's face it, it would have been fun to watch Donald Trump be president for a couple of years. Let him do all the work. Let him say the outrageous stuff. Let him stick his neck out. Now it's time for all of us to join the fight. A lot of us were on the sidelines, just watching, rooting him on, enjoying it, but not getting our hair mussed up, not getting dirty ourselves. It's about to change. That's about to change.
You want to know why running on the treadmill 7 days a week doesn't work for you when you're trying to lose weight? Because it never has. And I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. Cardio actually burns